For this part of the exercise, we want to be able to animate either individual characters coming up, or words, or entire lines. So let's get started. The next part of this is going to take place between 9 and 16 seconds. So let's move our work area to be roughly around 9 seconds, and then we'll extend this ending part to be around 16 seconds. We can also bring our playhead back to the 9-second mark. The first thing we need to do next is to choose our type tool and type out the words, "Your heart is true." And I'm going to center that towards the top center, right about there. Now, since we're animating individual characters, let's go down to our Layers panel, twirl open the options for "Your heart is true," click on the Animate options, and we're going to add both opacity and position. So click on Opacity. You can see how that adds an opacity animator. And one more time, we're going to click on it and we're going to add a position animator to your range selector as well. With this set, we're going to set our playhead at 9 seconds and 10 frames. This is right where they start to say "Your heart is true." From here, let's set the position value to be 0 and 100. Notice that this will bring your words down just a bit. Also, while we're here, let's set the opacity to be 0. Now, this is going to get rid of the visibility for your entire words, but we're going to animate this coming back on. In order to animate it, open up your range selector, and we're going to adjust the start time. With our playhead set at 9 seconds and 10 frames, click on the Start stopwatch to add a keyframe. Then we can move our playhead over to 10 seconds and 20 frames, roughly right there, and bring up the start value to 100%. You can see when you do this in scrubbing how it's going to look once it's animated. From here we can go back and we can play it, and you can see the individual letters now appear. With this done, we can close out our layer. And let's duplicate the layer by hitting Command D. And let's change the text for this new layer. This one's going to be called "You're a Pal." And I'm going to make mine a little bit larger to fill up the entire space width. So I'm going to place it right about there. Now for this, we don't want to have the individual letters. We want the individual words to come up. Let's return down to our timeline, open up the text, open up Animator 1, and also our range selector. The first thing we want to do is to adjust the start and stop time. Let's do the last keyframe first. So go into our second keyframe, this one here. We're going to have that moved over to 12 seconds and 4 frames. If I need to move my playhead, that may be a little bit easier. So right here, 12 seconds, 4 frames. Then the first one can be put on 11 seconds and 4 frames. I'm going to move this back and change your first keyframe to be 11 seconds and 4 frames. This will line up to when they're saying "Your pal." Now, in order to bring up not individual characters but words, let's go down to our Advanced options under your range selector and change the based on from characters to words. Now when it animates, the entire word will come up. Now that we're finished with this one, let's twirl this layer closed, and let's duplicate this layer one more time for the last line. So Command D, we'll drag this copy down, and we'll type out "and a confidant." Again, I'll scale it down to fit my overall composition and place it right here. And for this one, we want the entire line to be animated. So for the "and a confidant" layer, let's open up the text, Animator 1, and then range selector. We need to set our start and stop point for these keyframes, and a confidant is going to end at 14 seconds. So let's put our playhead there and move that keyframe over, and it's going to start at 12 seconds and 12 frames. And so let's put our starting keyframe right there. To make the entire line show up, open up your advanced options and set the based on from words to lines. Now when we play this, the entire thing comes up too. As we've done with all of the others, let's close out theirs. We'll select all of our layers by holding Shift, right-click, and let's pre-compose them. I'm going to call this You're a Pal. Or let's do Your Heart is True. That sounds better. We'll say OK to this. Let's trim the starting and stopping time for this one to match the needs for this design. So I'm going to set the start time to be roughly 9 seconds. It's okay if it's off by a little bit. And we'll set the stop time to be roughly 16 seconds. And the final thing we need to do to our composition is have it remove itself from the scene. In my case, I'm going to set my playhead to be at about 15 seconds and 10 frames. So that's right when they end it. And we're going to twirl open. This time I'm going to do an opacity change. So I'm going to set my opacity stopwatch and then move my playhead over to be roughly 16 seconds right there. And we'll have it fade out the opacity down to 0% over that time. So to play it, there it goes, fading away from there. All right, let's go up to File and save our document. Now this is going to end the first part of working in this exercise. In the next part, we're going to do some more advanced techniques.